My name is Siri. I am 21 years old. I'm from Denver, Colorado, and my current trajectory of life is I'm in the process of working that out and figuring that out with God. I think growing up, I saw two very different sides of things, because my parents were divorced, and so I almost lived two very different lives depending on whose house I was at that week. My mom and my stepdad were always very stable and supportive, and they pushed having this relationship with God, versus when I would go to my dad's house, he was very unstable, wishy-washy. He was an extreme alcoholic, and so it was always just very up and down on how the week was going to go, the trajectory of what was going to happen. It was kind of all over the place. As I started to grow up, and the older you get, I think the more you look back and start to understand more about your life. And I think when it came to my dad and him being so unstable and putting his kids last, I think suffered from a lot of this want to be just accepted and cared about and a priority in people's lives. And I think that kind of has carried with me. Before finding that in Jesus, I would search from it from the world, from friends, from my bosses, my peers, my parents, from boys I would date and go out with. I always just wanted someone to accept me and make me a priority, just because for so long my dad didn't and chose so many other things over us. So I was looking for it in the things of the world, where I was never going to receive that acceptance and love and fulfillment from. It was honestly just a constant battle of you're not good enough, no one's going to love you for who you truly are. I just really just talked down on myself. I wasn't going to be worth anyone's time. I wasn't going to be worth anyone's love. I was always just going to be everybody's second option. The turning point was ultimately when my dad passed away, and so I think it took away a lot of those kind of emotions, but at the same time it brought up a lot more, I guess, if that makes sense. I just feel there was so many things and so much trauma that I got from my dad that I didn't fully process while he was still here. And so after he passed away, I think that's when I finally because before I wasn't very close to God. And then after, I think I ran to God 100%, and then with him I worked out and went through so many things that this is why I feel this way. These are all of the problems that are now coming up. I think in the heaviness of losing any parent, whether they were super involved in your whole entire life or whether they were very wishy-washy, I think at the time it was just so devastating to think about how for the last years of his life he was not around. And so I think I had to battle that out with God. I was just so confused at first as to why would God let this happen? Why wouldn't God it was almost I was yelling at God, God, why didn't you save him? Why didn't you fix his problems? Or why didn't you keep him around for me? Which obviously brought up even more trust issues, abandonment issues, all of those things. But if I'm was talking to my old self now, I 100% have forgiven so much, and it has changed so much of my perspective and the way I view people and the way I view things, and how I will never hold something against someone ever again. And because I think a big one was I never realized how short time was, and it was I was grasping on to the pain that he had caused me, rather than taking it up with God and God working through me to forgive him and pour into him. And I could have showed him what he could have, and pushed him to grow in his faith and go towards God and fix his problems. I was once so scared of abandonment, and I didn't belong, and I was someone's second choice, and no one was ever going to choose me over over anything, and then finding like my identity and growing in my relationship with God. Like, I've never felt so at peace and like comfortable and like I belong, and like I finally, I think for the first time in my life, just feel so loved and like comforted. And it's just such a beautiful thing to see like how God has taken like one of the worst possible things that can happen to anyone, and he's turned it and like blossomed me into such like he's blossomed me into having like such a big heart for other people. And he took away like all bitterness and all resentment, and he's only replaced me with like so much forgiveness and love. And I no longer sit here and ask like, why would you put me through this? Instead, I like have changed it into something like, thank you so much for putting me through this, because it's like, this is when I finally like ran to God, and we like created this beautiful like relationship that I have with him. And I no longer like fear being abandoned, or like I no longer have like these trust issues with people. And like I know that as long as I have him, like I'm gonna be taken care of, and like I am going to be okay.